James Islington's The Will of the Many is a really promising start to a new fantasy series that was released this year in 2023. Let's talk about it. So if you've never heard of James Islington, he's most well known for writing the Lycanius trilogy, and he is one of those people who seems to be incredibly driven in that apparently he read The Name of the Wind and some Brandon Sanderson and then thought, I can do that too. And so he went and did it. And wow, I mean, we all bow to that. This is the start of a new series. The Strength of the Few is going to be released next year, we expect. I read it just this last month and I had a very, very good time with it. It's been doing the rounds on Goodreads, on YouTube, lots of positive things people are saying about it. It's a Roman style fantasy, which I think, to be honest, I don't remember ever reading any fantasies that have that kind of ancient history, Roman history kind of aesthetic to them. But the weird thing is actually in this last month, I've read two, because we also have Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio, which I also just read. And there's, various kind of Roman things going on there. But this one is very much, because it's more fantasy than sci-fi, it can really lean into those Roman aspects. What you end up with is a book that is incredibly unique. I don't think I've read anything quite like this in terms of the world building. Let's talk a little bit about that world building, because one of the most, I think, unique things about this book is its incredible magic system, which is based around the concept of the hierarchy in society. There are 8 strata. And they're all kind of named after, they're all Romanish names. So you have the Octavii, and you have the Septimii and the Sextii and all that.
How often do you think about the Roman Empire, babe?
Probably daily. So in this hierarchy, those who are below in the lower rungs cede their what is called will, which is essentially like a life force, to those in the rungs above them. And there's a pyramid kind of structure. And what this will allows you to do is, if you can draw on the will from the lower classes, from those who have ceded it to you, you can essentially use their strength as if you're kind of having the strength of 8 people. There are other aspects to it too, but that's, I think, the way that this book mostly delves into it. One thing it does really well is it contrives this fate that's worse than death, which is to be consigned to the sappers. And the sappers essentially pull all of your will from you, and it gets distributed, and essentially you are useless as a person.
Same.
Sometimes I feel like I'm in a sapper. On a Monday morning.
Depression.
It does sound like clinical depression.
We're allowed to say that because we're both on antidepressants.
There is this constant looming threat in the book that the main character is going to be put into one of these sappers, and that is essentially, what they're trying to escape from. To that is basically, there is basically no execution in the society, because why would you waste a perfectly good person whose will you can draw from? So as you progress through the story, you start off being presented with people from the very low rungs, and then as the story progresses, you meet more and more high rungs, and it gives this really interesting kind of power creep throughout the book as you meet people who are higher and higher on this hierarchy. It kind of reminds me of that feeling when you're watching Digimon and Digimon would digivolve into something that was even more powerful. It was just, I don't know why Digimon came to mind, but it's nothing like Digimon. But it kind of gave me that same kind of feeling of ooh, that person's a Quartus. They must be very powerful. So that's a bit of a background, some context to the story. The way it's told, fine, come back here. Let go. There we go. The way it's told, it's kind of told in a first person. Bang. No. Let go of my jumper. There we go. It's told in a first-person present narrative. I can't remember the last time I read a first-person present narrative. It was probably The Hunger Games, actually, which is wild to think. It's a rare point of view, but it actually works incredibly well for what the plot is all about. Because in The Will of the Many, you only have one point of view character, and that is this guy called Vis. That is the name he goes by. If you've read the blurb on the back of the book, you kind of already know what it's roughly about. He's not a member of the Catenan society. Yes, Caten is the name of the country. And if anyone finds that out and finds out what his role was in this other society, then he is basically, he's going to be sent to a sapper if anyone finds out. So there's this huge tension that runs through the book where he's desperately trying not to be found out. And the first person present narrative does an incredible job of putting you inside his mind, building up that tension within each scene, especially those scenes that are where it does feel like he is treading on ice, desperately trying to not say the wrong thing. I think that is incredibly effective. To draw another comparison with Empire of Silence, which is also told from a first-person perspective, but that one's told from a first-person past perspective. So in Empire of Silence, Christopher Rocchio can use plenty of foreshadowing because, the person who's telling the tale has experienced everything. He knows what's going to happen next. But James Islington, in his character of Vis, it allows him to live in the moment, to basically have that uncertainty, and you're carried along with it. You're carried along with all of the emotions that Vis is experiencing. Right from the first chapter, you're thrown into this world, and I think it does a really good job of setting some of the tone, setting the themes as you're kind of thrown into this scene where Vis is introduced. He is basically one of these prison wardens who has the job of looking after people who have been consigned to these sappers. And there's a powerful person who arrives on the scene demanding to go and be led down to one of these people, and he wants him to essentially be awoken from the sapper to have a conversation with him. You're given so much insight into how Vis's mind works, how he's trying to create this facade, but also his ability, his skills, his knowledge, and the way that he has all this power of languages, that he knows so many different languages that he can then understand the secret conversation that's going on. This kind of brings me into some of the things that I perhaps like less about the book, because that first scene really hooked me, and I really wanted more in that atmosphere, that kind of slightly darker tone, the bit more intrigue. There are sparks of that throughout the book, but most of the book takes place in this academy where Vis has managed to gain access to the formal education that would be given to the son of a senator or a daughter of a senator. Naturally, it's a very good ground for all those moments of, is he going to be found out? There was a very interesting promise of, getting to explore that world. The world building is so interesting. I wanted more of it throughout the book. It was kind of, once you're inside the academy, the only way to access the world building is for Vis to then go out on excursions. And so he kind of feels a little bit locked in. Islington gives himself a bit of he ties one hand behind his back by essentially not allowing Will, this whole kind of magic system we've been introduced to. The contrivance is that you're not actually allowed to use Will inside the academy. So you're given this really interesting magic system, and then it becomes something in the background for a lot of the book. A lot of people say that the academy is their favorite part of the book. For me, I think it's actually possibly the weakest part. It's very difficult to write an academy setting without it feeling very YA. Naturally, students, there's that youthfulness, there's that kind of making friends, and these are all kind of tropes of the YA genre. Dark academia lends itself quite well to YA. He might have got away with it, except for one of the challenges they have to do in this academy is they have to get better at this gauntlet called the Labyrinth. You're hearing capital T, capital L is one of those classic kind of YA nouns. Again, it kind of reduces the intrigue a bit to like a game where they're trying to get better at the game. And it is explained later. You get plenty of explanation as to why they're doing this, which kind of helps you understand it a bit better and makes it feel less contrived. It just felt like one of the weaker elements of the book to me. I think that's most of the things that I wasn't too keen on. For the most part, the characters are very well drawn and they are distinct. None of the characters are drawn particularly deeply. They're given roles and they satisfy those roles very effectively. So it's quite lean storytelling and quite well done. It's difficult to critique it necessarily. What this book suggests, though, is that it's the setup for an incredibly promising sequel. If we get to experience more of the world outside of the academy, which it seems like we will, if we get to see Vis interacting with the higher elements of the hierarchy, more of that political intrigue, and at the very end you get a huge kind of monumental upending of everything you expected in that epilogue, and it kind of ramps up in pace, almost kind of reminded me of the pace of the end of Rogue One. If that's anything to go by, the sequel, which apparently is called The Strength of the Few and apparently is going to be released next year, is going to be an incredible book. I'm definitely going to read it. for the most part, I would say I thoroughly enjoyed The Will of the Many, and I'd recommend any of you to pick it up. That was my little review.
Who's your favourite Roman emperor?
I'm going to steal one of my friend's favourite Roman emperors, which is actually Augustus.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. He did a whole brand new thing, and he survived.
I asked some of my colleagues at work this question yesterday, and one of them said Caesar. Technically not an emperor.
Not by name, but by nature. Now, there's a few things you need to do. Go like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at Hardy's Books. Follow us on TikTok at Hardy's Books. And maybe go and buy a book at hardysbooks.co.uk. Laura, help me out.
Like and subscribe. It would really do us a massive favour.
Yes. Thank you.